You should leave your playgroup. Your friends you play Magic with often, ditch them. That group you jam games with at the same game store every week, ignore them. Your playgroup is holding you back. I know mine did. Look, I love my friends and my original playgroups, but I think leaving them has done a lot to improve my deck building, skill level, and opinion of EDH overall. But first though, if you want to buy any singles or sealed product, check out this channel's sponsor, Cool Stuff Inc. If you use my code TTM, you get a discount, this token, and it supports the channel. Obviously, having a regular playgroup has benefits. Playing EDH with your actual friends is nice. I like hanging out with my friends too. Also, it's easier to make sure games are balanced. When you are with your friends, it's unlikely that someone is going to bring a crazy deck that completely blindsides the table. Unless that's what your friends do, and in which case it's normal. With your friend group, EDH can be whatever you want it to be. You don't like a card? It's gone. You do like a card? It's unbanned. Who cares? You also know more about your friends' decks. If your buddy plays an Aristocrats combo deck, then you are ready for that combo. You probably already know what cards signal that the combo is close to being completed. You might know that the Elf deck can easily take out the whole table if they are able to get to 10 or more creatures on board. And you know that this Blink control deck is slow but powerful in the late game, so you will need to keep an eye out for those value engines. My friend has a Lagomos deck. Within the playgroup, we know that it is very important to destroy these enchantments that make a dude every turn. But random players don't know that. So this deck can be really powerful against them since the Achilles heel is not obvious to someone who's never seen the deck before. You know what your friends' decks are going to do, and for the most part, nothing is too surprising. No accusations of the wrong bracket or playing overpowered decks or cards. Consistency is nice to have. But this also creates a bubble of sorts. If the only decks you ever see are the same ones your friends play, then that becomes the only way you interact with the format. So if nobody in your playgroup has an artifact deck, you will simply have no experience with those. If no one in your playgroup uses combos, graveyard decks, or creatureless strategies, then your view of Magic is going to be very skewed. This is really common among playgroups, since the vast majority of players just play the default mid-range commander deck. You know, the ones where you play a few dudes, you play your commander, and then you play a finisher, and they're all kind of roughly the same, just in different colors. This phenomenon actually makes you a worse player overall, simply by being less knowledgeable about the format and what is out there. This is what I think causes some culture shock at game stores. If you have never seen a combo deck before, then it might surprise you. And you weren't able to recognize the signs of them getting close to winning, because you've only ever seen decks that need a bunch of creatures in play to play an overrun effect and then win. This Sack Owlet didn't raise any red flags. It's not just combo decks though. There are lots of less conventional decks that can surprise players. Control decks, polymorph decks, and Reanimator can all be strange and new to a player who hasn't seen them before. If you've never needed to play Graveyard Hate in the past, then you will be punished when you play against a graveyard deck. Playing against only a few small types of decks does make you a worse player overall, by not knowing how to deal with different types of decks. It's because your playgroup will often become very inbred. This affects all playgroups. If you ever saw my original old Mina and Den list, I had Vexing Shusher, Prowling Cephalopard, and Savage Summoning, because there was a lot of blue in my playgroup. Ultimately, these cards became much less useful when I played against other players at my local game store. Honestly, they would be dead cards most of the time. But not only do you lose to new things, you can also learn new things. Maybe a deck that you lost to is something you find cool. One of my favorite things to see when I play against randos are new cards or commanders. It's really hyped to see someone play a new card that just got printed, or maybe an old commander you haven't seen before. You get to see these cards in action and maybe find inspiration for your own decks. In past videos, I've talked about building new types of decks, or decks you dislike playing against, to learn about them. So building a mill deck if you hate mill for whatever reason. But that is tedious, even with all proxies. Making a whole new deck is a big chore. It's easier to learn about a deck by meeting a player who has that list and asking them, do you like the deck? What are the weaknesses? What are the strengths? Most players like their deck and are willing to yap about them. And if you find that that mill deck is very frustrating to deal with for whatever reason, simply asking them, how do you lose games, will be a good way to point you in the right direction of how to beat this deck. This is how you improve as a casual EDH player. Learning more about the game, play patterns, and new cards will make you a better Magic player overall. In EDH, you don't have this overarching goal of winning every game all the time. It's not a tournament after all. But I do think it is healthy to have the goal of knowing more about the game and improving your play. Losing is fine in casual Commander, but losing because you misplayed is something that you can work on and improve. And I think that is a good goal to have. This way your losses are not you misplaying or not knowing something that was going to happen or not knowing what a card did, and instead your losses are when something crazy, wacky, or zany happens. You know, the stuff that makes EDH special. Now, this can be said for a lot of things. Anytime you can broaden your horizons, it will improve your knowledge and skill. The more cards you play, the more players you meet, formats you play, and cards you just see will make you a better Magic player. As long as you know that you can improve. You have to know that any loss could be from a lack of knowledge or poor deck construction on your part. When you play with a regular playgroup, you sometimes see your friends get off to a fast start and win quickly, or maybe they won with a weird rules interaction or card that you hadn't seen before. And then you learn from that, and the next time you see that deck, you go, oh, they don't have as fast of a start. This is more the average power level of the deck. Or you say, hey, I know what that card does from the previous game, I'm ready for it this time. But when you see a random player do either of those things, get off to a fast start or win with something you didn't know about, that's a pub stomp. We forget that with strangers, we're only seeing one game probably. And with friends, we see multiple games and can actually tell what the average power level of their deck is or how their deck works. The benefit of the doubt doesn't seem to extend to randos. But if you take this idea and believe that any win can be had, assuming you played better or constructed your deck better, then you can always improve in casual EDH. Adding Graveyard Hate, more instant speed interaction, or whatever else your deck was missing due to the inbred meta will help your deck do better against random players. I do want to add a little note here about improving your deck as a concept. I use the term improving here because I'm referring to the practice of getting new cards and adding them to your deck for the purpose of your deck performing better. But that is better within the metagame of playing with random players. If nobody in your playgroup plays artifact decks, then it is likely you can run no artifact removal and not be punished for it. In my casual decks, I don't have any Storm Hate cards because the archetype is almost never played in casual Commander, so it's logical to skip out on it. But if your local meta or friend group has someone who plays Storm all the time, then maybe you should play some anti-Storm cards. So when I say improve, I don't mean strictly improve, it's improving for the metagame of playing against random players, as opposed to your playgroup. Another thing players learn from playing outside their playgroup is other power levels. Or I guess we would call them brackets now. The power level your playgroup is at is not always what everyone else does. My old playgroup was basically all bracket 4 all the time. Every deck would have to be ready for MLD or fast combos. It's funny how somehow these decks would actually feel worse against random casual lists, since my over-reliance on mana rocks to counter my opposing MLD would actually lead to a loss to a random Vandal Blast effect. Not only that, but I used to really hate how slow and boring casual EDH was. But after graduating school and leaving that bracket 4 playgroup, I forced myself to build slower decks for playing at random game stores. This was not only a deck building challenge that I think led to some of my most interesting decks, but it also made me much better at playing and deck building. When I don't have access to all the best card draw, can I still make my non-blue control deck work? I also had to broaden my deck building and use new cards I hadn't played before, since they were too slow for my old playgroup. This ultimately made me fall in love with low power EDH again. I think the old me would not be interested in bracket 2, but after forcing myself to build it, I've had a lot of fun. As someone who is chronically online, I see lots of comments and posts on social media about how bad EDH is, how many pub stompers there are, how players complained about this deck or that, and I think a lot of those feelings can come from culture shock after leaving a playgroup. Your playgroup didn't use many board wipes, so you've never added counterplay to them to your deck. And then you run into more board wipes in the wild, and suddenly your decks can't win. You always play one power level, and then other players play at a different one, meaning your deck either gets 3v1 stomped because you clearly had the stronger deck, or maybe someone else is supposedly pub stomping. When in reality, your view on the format was just so narrow that you can't even see the whole world of different decks out there. And your deck might be tuned for a really specific metagame instead of being effectively ready for anything. If you want to know how to be ready for anything, subscribe. I think I got a video coming out soon that will help your deck take on anything. Of course, sometimes at events, you will run into players you don't like, maybe for non-MTG reasons. I was just talking to a patron about a salty experience they had at a local game store, and I think that the player they ran into was at fault and sort of out of line beyond the scope of Magic. It's not someone I think I would enjoy playing EDH with, regardless of what my deck was. A link below, by the way, if you want to join the Patreon Discord and yap about things there. Unpleasant people do exist, and you do run the risk of bumping into them when you leave your comfy playgroup. But the opposite is also true. There are new friends to be made by venturing out and meeting new Magic players outside of your normal playgroup. When I first moved to San Diego for school, I met a guy via Reddit of all places, and we both met up at a local game store since we were both new to the area. And to this day, even outside of Magic, we're still friends. Maybe in hindsight, that wasn't the safest idea, but it worked out. Leaving my playgroup has been the best thing for my enjoyment of the format. I feel like I can now appreciate more of what EDH has to offer than ever before, and I met a lot of new cool people because of it. Staying within a bubble can solidify beliefs and cause you to be more negative because of those. We've seen it happen all over the place in other areas outside of Magic. And in a social format like Commander, the same is true. Your bubble can breed negativity. So where should you go to leave your playgroup? Well, the easy answer is to find a local game store that has a Commander night and see what happens. You can also go to larger events like a MagicCon. In theory, this video should be out right before MagicCon Vegas, which I will be at, so hopefully I'll see you there, maybe at my panel. Lastly, if you don't have a game store near you and traveling to a MagicCon is out of the cards, then Spell Table is another place to go. A slight asterisk on Spell Table, it lets you play games with people over the internet via webcam, which is really great. It's cheap, you just need a webcam and sufficient setup to have it point downwards. But the anonymity of the internet does make the average Spell Table user less nice than they might otherwise act if it was in person. But hey, it's free other than buying the webcam, so it's a good option. I hope you found this video interesting and are inspired to go out and play a game against some randos at a new LGS. Let me know how it goes, and if you come back to watch this video a second time to let me know, let it play all the way. It helps retention. Thanks. Foxel asks, you have put on a celebrity boxing tournament with Elk fighting Rachel, you fighting Josh, and Alex fighting Jimmy. Who's winning those matches? Okay, I have not met Josh or Rachel in person, so take this with a grain of salt. Alex is definitely clobbering Jimmy. Alex is like 6'2". He's not like jacked or anything, but he's pretty big and has like pretty good reach, which size does mean a lot in boxing. And, no shade to Jimmy. I think he's in like perfectly fine shape, but the size difference is going to be tough. I think same thing though with Josh. I'm 6 foot. I'm shorter than Alex, and Josh is kind of a big guy. So I think we'd be out of weight classes. So I think Josh would probably beat me up. I think Elk probably loses to Rachel. Maybe, I don't know. It's hard to say. Elk's a smaller guy, but I've also never met Rachel in person, so I can't really tell. I don't know how like long her arms are. So that one's kind of a coin toss. It could go either way. Anyway, if you want to ask random questions like that or be in the credits like my tier 3 patrons here, click the link below to check out the Patreon.